Okay, welcome to the hands-on portion of the course. This is the best practices for file services. Basically, how to configure a network share for other people to use. It's all about setting up the permissions. Now, just like one of the previous hands-on, there's an awful lot of lecture component to this one. So it's not just hands-on. There's a lot of stuff to learn. So before we get started, we basically need to have a way to record what the permissions ought to be. And there's a cool term, it's called an access matrix. So this is an example of an access matrix where, for example, here are the administrators group and accounting and the accounting admin and accounts payable, accounts receivable, some auditing that has to happen, and maybe some sales and engineering. And so this particular group, or folder rather, this is the folders. You know, the accounting, what do they get? And the accounts payable people, what do they get? The accounts receivable, what do they get? What do the audit people get? And then the sales people. It's just a way of documenting the requirements. If you don't start with the requirements, then you're just going to be hodgepodge throwing things everywhere. And you're a system administrator. You don't necessarily get to decide this. In this example, you would go to the accounting people and say, okay, wait a minute now. You really want to separate the people who work on accounts receivable from accounts payable and have them only be able to see each other's stuff? Oh, no, they can see. I just don't want them to be able to go in and change things. You go, okay, I got that. So you have to figure this out, hopefully in concert with someone else. Okay. The next thing you have to do is build the groups. So you figured out exactly what the permissions are supposed to be on the physical files. Now you need to go build those dang groups. And there's an awful lot of rules for that. Gee, are you surprised? Okay, before we can start building a, well, yeah. Let me just go ahead and go down here to good old users and computers. Okay, so this has all of our groups in it, right? Okay, so if you recall, there's 3 different types. You know, there's the domain local group, cool. A global group, cool. And a universal group. Now, looking at the icon, can you tell them apart by just looking at the icon there? Nah. And in fact, outside of this context, when you're looking at this one particular thing for Active Directory users and computers, from now on, you won't be able to tell them apart. And that's kind of an important thing. So, one of the things, the best practices would be to create these names with like a suffix on the end, like G for global or U for universal. Now, I typically don't put the suffix on the local ones because those are the ones I'm going to use. In fact, I specifically don't put them on the locals so that when you take a permissions and you see anything with a suffix on it, you know you've screwed up. Because when you're applying permissions, you're only supposed to be using the local groups. Remember all that? Okay, good. Okay. So here are the best practices. Name the group with a suffix. Well, if it's a global or a universal. I do like an underscore U and underscore G. That's what I do. Nest the groups inside each other. And this is not a hard and fast rule. But you can have, like, I'm going to use engineering as an example. So I have engineering, and then I have mechanical engineering and civil engineering section. So I have this kind of matches an organizational chart. You know, I have a engineering division, and then I have a mechanical engineering branch and a civil engineering branch, okay? And it has people in it. So rather than put them in, okay, you're also in the division and in the branch, it makes sense to nest the groups together so that you only have to populate one group. It just saves time, okay? Now, unlike organizational units like this, you cannot see them when they're nested, okay? See how we have this thing here with the organizational, units? Well, when you nest a group, you can't see that it's nested by looking at it. That's a little weird. Just bear with me. Okay. And when you're doing nested names, because you can't see them, it kind of makes sense so that they should appear alphabetically. So, for example, let me go ahead and just build one. So I'm going to go here and build me a group. All right. So new group. What kind of group do you want it to be? Well, I'm going to start with a global group. And so I'm going to call mine engineering. How's that? Okay, but I'm going to call it underscore G for global. okay? And then I want to have some nested ones underneath it. But to keep them, since there's no way graphically to show that they're nested, I want to pick a name that kind of makes them stick in the same order. So I'm going to create me another one here. So I'm going to go new group, and I'm going to do this one called engineer like civil, okay? Underscore G. And that makes them show up. I mean, it gives you a fighting chance of realizing, oh wait, those two things are somehow related. Okay, it's just a fighting chance. You cannot see that they're nested. In fact, they're not nested yet, but they will be. Okay, so that's the idea. By the way, don't do it civil engineer, because if it's civil, it would be up here in the C's, right? I want to be able to see them all together, okay? Good, all right. So when it comes to building the local groups, I want to use the exact same name except without the suffix, okay? Let's do that. So I'm going to go here to new, I'm going to build me a group, and I'm going to build me an engineering group. And this time without a suffix, and it's a domain local group. Boink. Okay, so now I have engineering G. So I would have, you know, if I was going to do this all, that I also would have a engineering civil without a G would be a local group, and then, you know, one for mechanical, right? Okay, now one more time. Where do I put the people? Well, I put the people in the global group, and then I go to the global group, add the subgroups to it, and then just add the one thing I need into the local group. Okay. Whew. All right. Let me go ahead and just finish off some of this. I'm not going to waste your time. I'm going to pause the video to do that. Okay. So I've already built these guys. So now I have two of these guys called civil engineering, two of these called engineering, two of them called engineering mechanical. Okay. So now it's time for me to put those things in each other. So for example, the engineering G guy, okay, if I go to members and I want to add some other members to this, I want to add the engineer's civil guy. By the way, I could do a semicolon here, and then engineering mechanical underscore G. I'm going to hit check name because I'm a terrible speller. Okay, so now I have actually nested those guys. Okay, cool. So when it comes to having this guy now has all the things in it. So when it comes time to put people in it, all I have to do is put them in the mechanical one or the civil one, and this one would automatically get populated. I don't have to put them in two different locations. That just takes up too much of my time. Okay, now this sounds a little like like an awful lot of repetition, but we're going to do it again for this guy, for the local guy. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go to members, and I'm going to add the G guys, right? So this is just going to be ENG civil G. That makes sense? Okay, once again, I'm not going to bore you with doing all this stuff live. But now, this guy is inside that guy is inside that guy is inside that guy has other things below it. Okay, hopefully you followed all of that. Okay, so now that I've got this thing, then I probably need to create an organizational unit to put some accounts into. Now, this is not a required step, because once again, organizational units are for administration via group policy objects. Groups are for permissions. They're not really related. So I'm going to go here to accounts, and I am going to go in here and build me a new organizational unit. And I'm going to call it engineers. Hey, by the way, is there any problem with having multiple things called engineering? I have something down here called engineering. I have something down here called engineering. I have something here called engineering. Is that going to be a problem? I mean, do I have that? I got three things called engineering, and it doesn't seem to be complaining. Okay, makes sense? Okay. All right. So let's continue. I need to create some accounts to be able to play with to do this thing. So let's do that. I'm going to create one called John Smith. All right. So I can do this directly from the organizational unit. If you remember, I can go here and say I want a new user, right? And then I'm going to say John Smith. And unfortunately, I do have to put in a dang password. I wish I could skip that step, but hey, what the heck. And I'm going to go ahead and say, because we are going to log into this guy, you know, future thing. So I'm going to go ahead and just use the same old one I've always used, 4376 2022 CIS4376 22. Okay, so now I've built me a guy. Yay! I'm going to go ahead and build another, but I'm not going to waste your time doing it. Okay, I got my two, test accounts. So I need to put John Smith in the Civil Engineering G group. I could do this two different ways. I could do a right click on this guy and bring up, his properties. And then where it says member of, I could add. Okay, that's one way of doing it. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to type in ENG, what did I say, civil? Yeah, civil. _G. Remember I'm putting it in the G guy? Okay, so now I have that guy. Now on the other one, I'm going to do it the opposite way around. I'm going to go back over to here. I'm going to grab the mechanical engineering G guy, okay, and say members. And then I add Jane Doe. So it's just two different ways to do the same thing, right? No big deal. All right, so I've added my people to these groups. Cool? All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a folder structure so we can have this magical share happen for us. So I'm just going to go back to the plain old File Explorer, go to my C drive. And we already had one called shared. And if you had been following along from the previous assignment, previous thing, we probably want to get rid of the share. If you have it, go in there and tell it, no, I don't want it anymore. So under shared, I want to create a folder structure. And so this is going to be matching that matrix, the access matrix guy. So I'm going to create one called engineering, which is the top level guy. And then I'm going to have one called underneath engineering. I'm going to have one called civil. And by the way, the names don't, this is folder structure. It doesn't actually have to match anything now. Civil. And then I can put a mechanical, electrical, or whatever else. However my organization is set up. Okay, so now I have a folder structure in here. All right, the next thing I need to do is when I created this guy, these folders, I became the owner of these guys. So when I go in here, properties, and go to security, it shows me as in here. And so typically you leave this part alone. I'll explain why in just a minute. But we need to have a deep dive on how these access control lists work. All right, let me just start from the beginning. There are two different types of access control lists. One called a discretionary access control list, a DACL. And discretionary means the owner of the object, in this case, the owner of the mechanical folder, the owner gets to decide what the permissions are. Now, in a normal world, that actually works pretty doggone well. It's a little weird, but whoever created it is the owner, and the owner gets to decide. So I created it, I get to decide. There's another one called a system access control list, or SACL, and that's where the system administrator gets to decide what the permissions are. And in the Windows world, that's very rare. And the only real place where you see this is when you set up auditing. Okay, I'm just going to temporarily go in here to this. And there's a thing for auditing. Now, I don't have it turned on. But if I did have it turned on, this would be the thing. And so if I use this, then that becomes a system guy. And now the owner has no control over whatsoever. They can't turn it off or on. They can't do anything, even though they're the owner. Okay, that kind of makes sense? Okay, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark.